Welcome to Flames of Freedom, brought to you by Lance Tolan Entertainment. Episode 4, Lost in the Wilderness. In the previous episode, Diogo Nunez Ribeiro had just engineered his family's escape from Lisbon, Portugal, aboard a British galleon. He's celebrating with the captain the ruse they perpetrated, and then joins his wife on deck, imagining the bright future awaiting them in England.
Now, Captain, shall we retire to your cabin?
When they reached the cabin, my father gently uncocked the pistols and handed them to the captain.
That, my friend, was a most convincing performance.
I was not acting. I meant every word I said. If you had reneged on our agreement, I was prepared to shoot you and the priests.
I'm no fool. That's why I took the lead shot out of the pistols. I didn't want to take any chances.
My father laughed as the captain turned and filled 2 glasses with brandy and handed one to him.
To life.
Yes, to a new life. To conclude our agreement, I still owe you an additional 500 gold reales. Do you happen to have a knife I could borrow?
The captain opened a desk drawer and handed a small dagger to my father, who removed his jacket and carefully slid open the lining, pulling a long linen bag from it. He laid that on the desk and slid it open, revealing gold coins.
All the money is there. Feel free to count it.
No need. You are an honorable man, Dr. Nunez.
To your health. Para sua saúde.
To yours as well. And may you find the freedom that you're seeking at long last.
An hour later, my parents stood on the ship's bow looking out to sea as the ship cut through the water, with the moon's light reflected in the waves.
Did you feel that?
Feel what? The wind?
No. Freedom, mon amour. Freedom.
So, your family was at last free?
Free we were, but we were starting a new life in a country we knew little about, and none of us spoke much English except for my father. We had great hopes, but none of us could have foreseen the challenges we'd face as we approached the white cliffs of Dover. We were all gathered there on deck when Captain Wingrave approached us.
My good friends, welcome to England.
My brother André was mesmerized by the sight of the English shore.
Is that a mirage? Or are those cliffs white?
Indeed they are. They're called the White Cliffs of Dover, lad.
My mother, on the other hand, was filled with apprehension. She knew how lethal and dangerous the Portuguese could be. I could hear her whisper the conversation with my father.
Diogo, I have been holding my breath for 8 days now, waiting for a Portuguese man of war to appear on the horizon to arrest us.
My love, breathe. Our years of looking over our shoulders are over.
My father put his arm around her and held her tightly as the waves broke over the ship's bow. He then motioned me over and held me with his other arm as he took the cross hanging from my mother's neck, lifted over her head, and then did the same with mine.
Diogo, what are you doing?
We don't need these any longer. They are the lies we have been living. It's time to shed them.
He then took his cross, lifted the chain over his head, and called out to the rest of our family.
Everyone, come here. Give me your crosses.
At first, my brothers and sisters hesitated, but they did as he requested, handing them to his outstretched hand. My father then lifted them above his head and looked heavenward.
God of Abraham, thank you for bringing us out of Portugal, where we were forced to pretend to be something we're not. Our Jewish identities stolen from us by the Catholic Church. Creator of the universe, we ask that our hiding ends now. that we never again have to renounce ourselves, and that being a Jew is among the many blessings you bestow upon us. Amen.
Amen.
He then took the crosses and tossed them high into the air. A giant wave swallowed them instantly.
Did that make you Jews again?
There is much more to that story if you're patient to hear it.
Of course, Nona. But tell me, why didn't your family just come to America instead of going to England?
At that point in time, we probably wouldn't have been welcome anywhere in America.
Why?
It's complicated. Perhaps it would be better to start with why we weren't so welcomed in England. The journey from Portugal to England was only 8 days. We were more than just 1,000 miles away from home. The customs were as foreign to us as if we were halfway around the world in China. Plus, we left behind everything familiar: our homes, livelihoods, identities. With all that, we all felt a sense of anticipation that our lives were about to begin for the first time when we arrived at the docks of London. It was all so exciting. Our crew lowered the gangplank to the docks, where people buzzed around carrying sacks of grain and other goods, almost like a colony of ants in a choreographed dance. We all just watched in amazement. I had never seen anything like this in Portugal. That's when Captain Wingrave approached my father.
Where is it you said you wanted to be taken?
The synagogue on Beavis Marks Road in Aldgate.
Good. Have your family wait there on the docks. I'll arrange for hackney carriages to get all of you there.
He descended the gangplank and disappeared in the throng below, and we followed, heading for a clearing near large sacks of grain stacked 6 feet high. A few minutes later, he returned with 2 carriage drivers in tow.
Dr. Nunez, these men will bring you to the synagogue. I've taken care of the fare. They're reliable, and we'll get you there safely.
The captain extended his hand to my father.
Sir, it has been an honor. May God be with you, and I hope you find all you're looking for in my fair England. Godspeed. Now, off you go.
This way, Governor. Follow me.
The carriage drivers led us through the throngs of stevedores to the road where 2 carriages were waiting.
I understand we're going to Beavis Marks Synagogue in Aldergate. That right, Governor?
That's correct.
Then please have everyone load up, and we'll be on our way.
How long will it take?
Yeah, part of an hour, Governor.
We all climbed aboard the 2 carriages and began winding our way through the London streets. On nearly every corner, beggars thrust their hands at us, asking for alms. At one busy intersection, we came to a halt, and they surrounded us. There must have been 30 or 40 of them.
Help! I have 5 children starving at home and no food.
Please help me.
Por favor, me ayuden. No tenemos nada.
Are you Portuguese?
Sí.
Here, take this.
My father reached into his jacket pocket and handed him a gold real.
Obrigado.
You're welcome.
Diogo, you know we have next to nothing.
But that's much more than they have.
The beggars, seeing that my father had money, began swarming the carriage, grabbing at us. My mother screamed out as someone tugged at her small handbag.
Please.
Help!
Diogo, help me!
She resisted, but the chain broke, and she did everything she could to hang on to it for dear life.
No, Diogo, my handbag!
My father grabbed the beggar's wrist and then hit him with the back of his hand. The beggar let go of the handbag and fell into the street as my mother clutched the handbag to her breast.
Driver, we must get out of here. Now, rápido!
The driver took his whip and began lashing out at the beggars, who moved back to avoid its sting as he cracked it repeatedly above his head. First targeting people to the left and then to the right.
Bloody bastard!
He then snapped the whip above the horses' heads, who reared up before they stampeded forward, knocking the beggars to the ground with their sharp hooves. The carriage jerked forward at first and then began to pick up speed as we left the crush of beggars behind us. I didn't quite understand what they were screaming at us, but I can tell you from their tone it wasn't kind.
That sounds terrible. Why were there so many hungry people? I always thought England was a very wealthy country.
It is. But as we soon discovered, England was a place where there were rich, poor, and destitute, and not much in between. And God forbid that you owed someone money. For that sin, you could be thrown in prison, and for all intent and purpose, they threw away the key. But that's getting ahead of the story. Shall I continue?
But I have one more question.
Yes, what is it?
What was in your mother's handbag that was so important?
2 keys.
Keys?
Yes. Now that you ask, would you like to see them?
You have them?
Oh, yes. Here, take a look. Where do you think they're from?
They're really old.
That they are. They're from our family house.
In Portugal?
No, in Spain.
I don't quite understand.
These keys are to the house that my ancestors left behind in 1492 when they fled to Portugal fearing for their lives. 618 Cuesta del Realejo in Granada. Against all odds, they had a burning hope and desire to return someday.
And how did you get them?
My mother gave them to me when I turned 19 years old, not long after we arrived in London. They were given to her by her grandmother, who in turn was given them by her grandmother, and so on, going back 8 generations.
That's remarkable.
Yes, it is. And now, I'm giving them to you if you promise to give them to one of your grandchildren when you're my age. If nothing else, they represent the sacrifices we have made and the resilience of our family and our faith.
Nona, I don't know what to say.
There is nothing to say. Just promise me that someday, if you can, you'll return to Granada, find our home on Cuesta del Realejo, and use the key to open the front door.
I promise, Nona.
Good. Now, where was I?
You were in the carriage on your way to the synagogue.
Oh, yes. On the way, we saw many more beggars on the street, but nothing like at that intersection. I was rattled by what occurred there. Glancing over at my mother, I could see in her eyes that she, too, was upset. We had never witnessed anything like that in Lisbon. When we arrived at Bibismarck Synagogue, we had something new to contend with on top of the realization that we were nearly as poor as the people begging us for alms. Strange as it may sound, none of us had ever seen a synagogue before, much less been in one. We had no idea what to expect when the carriage driver announced that we had arrived.
This be your place, Governor.
My father climbed down and shouted to the rest of us to join him.
All right, everyone. We have arrived.
As we all gathered around, the carriage drivers gave a quick flick of their wrist to crack the whip above the horses' heads and pulled away.
Have a good day, Governor. And best of luck to all of you.
Leaving us stranded and alone, like we had just landed on a deserted island.
Well, we're here.
We all just stood there, staring at the synagogue's wrought iron gates that led to a beautiful courtyard. My mother pulled my father to the side.
Diogo, I must have a word with you in private.
I must say there was nothing private in their conversation. As her voice raised, we could hear every word.
Diogo, I fear we have made a terrible mistake.
What do you mean?
We are total strangers here. What if no one can help us? We'll be out on the streets like those beggars.
But calm down. We won't be begging for our meals, I promise you. And keep your voice down. You're going to scare the others. Right now, we can't afford to be afraid. When we stepped on that boat in the Lisbon harbor, there was no turning back. Have faith. It's in God's hands.
My father turned away from her and began walking toward the gate, but none of us followed. He turned and stared at us.
Why the hesitation?
We've never stepped inside a synagogue before. What are we supposed to do when we go in?
But how? I don't know. We'll find out together.
How will they know we're Jews and not beggars? We're here with just the clothes on our backs. They could just throw us out on the street, and then what?
True, I suppose we all look a little foolish dressed like this, but come, we haven't traveled this far to have our fears get in our way. We won't be thrown out on the street. I won't have it. I give you my word.
With trepidation, we followed my father through the iron gates and slowly opened the door leading to the back of the empty sanctuary. I was struck by everything that was absent that I had become so accustomed to. No crosses or statues of Mary or Jesus being crucified, just beautiful stained glass windows and a candle burning above a cabinet at the front of the sanctuary. The silence was nearly deafening. I could hear the heavy breathing of all of those standing near me. Slowly, we dispersed and wandered the aisles, looking up and around in amazement.
They don't have a holy water font.
And no statues of saints anywhere.
And there's no real pulpit. It looks like the priest stands in the center, there.
My attention was drawn to the cabinet in the front with the ornate wooden handles on the doors. I wondered what was behind those doors. So innocently, I reached for one to open it and was startled by a voice that rang out from the back of the synagogue like a cannon.
Young lady, please do not open the ark. Women are not allowed to handle the Torahs.
It was a rabbi, a young man in his 20s, who was briskly heading up the aisle. I was startled and didn't understand what he was saying. I only knew a few words in English. My father called out to me.
María, amor, por favor, ven aquí.
Frightened, I stepped back from the doors.
Thank you. ¿Cuál es su nombre, young lady? What is your name?
Maria.
Your name was Maria then?
Yes.
But why did you change it to Zipporah?
Patience, Benjamin. I'll explain in due time. As I stood there perplexed by the rabbi's admonishment, my father extended his hand to the rabbi.
Allow me to introduce myself. I am Dr. Diego Núñez Ribeiro. We have just arrived on a ship from Lisbon this morning. So sorry for my daughter's innocent gesture.
The rabbi took his hand and shook it warmly.
Everything is fine. With time, she'll learn our customs. I'm Rabbi Isaac Nieto, a ship from Lisbon. You are Jews, no?
Our ancestors were Jews. We've been secretly practicing Judaism for generations. Outwardly, we are Christians.
So, you are conversos?
Yes, I suppose. In Portugal, they call us New Christians. Behind our backs, they refer to us as marranos. Pigs.
How in the world did your whole family manage to slip out of Lisbon?
Well, that's a long story. Perhaps for another day. By the grace of God, we escaped. But as you can see, we left with just the clothes on our backs.
For a moment, the rabbi turned and stared at all of us. I don't know what he was thinking as he looked at our fine clothing. We were clearly not poor beggars, but I guess you could say we weren't much different from the beggars we saw on the streets just an hour ago. We had no roof over our heads, no belongings, and just a few gold reals sewn into the hems of our clothing to keep us alive for a while.
Forgive me, you must be exhausted and hungry. Please, introduce me to your family.
Everyone, gather around. My wife, Gracia.
My mother extended her hand, but the rabbi simply bowed and did not take her hand.
I hope you do not take offense, madam. We have different custom here. Men traditionally don't shake hands with women.
Oh?
I don't think I had ever seen my mother so unsure of herself. Nervously, she dropped her hand to her side.
My 5 children, starting with the oldest, Manuel, André, Isabel, Teresa, and Maria.
It's my pleasure to welcome you to London.
And my assistant, Lucio Gama.
The rabbi extended his hand and shook all of my brother's hands, as well as Lucio's.
And are you a servant?
No, he is not my servant. He is one of us.
Actually, Rabbi, it is a complicated story. You see, I was born and raised as a Jew, but my parents perished in the Inquisition. And Diogo and Grazia, they gave me a home.
I see.
Yes, there is a tale to be told there, too, in due time. Let me introduce my brother-in-law and sister-in-law, Sebastião and Teresa, and close friends of my oldest daughters, Abrao and Rodrigo.
My pleasure. Do you have any other family here?
No one in London. The only ones who know we are here are you, the ship's captain, and the crew. I dare say many people in Lisbon know by now. The inquisitorial court has undoubtedly made a spectacle of our escape, probably burning us in effigy and confiscating all our possessions and our homes.
That's a shame, but you are alive, and that's what's important. This may seem indelicate, but may I inquire, do you have any resources?
We sewed some jewels and coins into the linings of our clothes before departing. Hopefully, it will be enough to see us through, at least for a while.
In the meantime, we need to find you lodging. At least temporarily, I can offer you a house to stay in. By divine providence, an elderly widow recently died and willed it to the synagogue. It's a modest dwelling, but it will be a safe roof over your heads for now. We also have a gemach here. Do you know what that is?
My father shook his head.
People contribute things to the synagogue, like clothing and pots and pans for cooking, for situations like this. We can't have you walking around London looking like you're on your way to a banquet, can we?
That is most generous.
Some women in our community will be happy to provide you with meals until you get settled. In the meantime, please wait here while I arrange things. And Maria, when you have a moment, I'd like to show you and your family and friends our Torah scrolls, give you a tour of the rest of the synagogue. Would you like that?
I smiled and nodded as the rabbi headed for the doors at the back of the synagogue. Suddenly, everyone began talking at once.
Okay, ele dice.
Ea comida, estamos famintos.
Ele vai nos ajudar.
He says he's going to help us and give us a house to stay in and some fresh clothing and food for everyone.
Needless to say, I was a bit naive about women handling the Torah.
How could you have known? You had never been in a synagogue before, or even seen a Torah scroll.
True. There were so many things we didn't know as we were embarking on a new life in a strange place. As we got settled in our house, I learned some startling news from my mother that first day. My father was looking out the window at all the people passing in the streets when my mother came down after taking a bath, wearing a simple dress that the women of the synagogue had given her.
Ah, that's better. Refreshed?
Yes, but I look like a peasant.
A beautiful peasant. Meu amor, come here. Let me hold you in my arms. Will you be my peasant?
Diogo, I will follow you to the end of the world with just the clothes on my back, which I have just done. But I must tell you, I never imagined we'd be living like paupers.
My sweet Gracia, this is not the end of our journey. This is just the beginning. Give it time. We have dealt with much worse in our lives, and we managed.
I know that in my head. But my heart wonders whether we are too old now for this kind of adventure. How we made a mistake.
No, we are not too old to start over. We've done it before. We can do it again.
I hope you are right, mi amor. But what if we don't fit in here? We dreamed for years of openly being Jews, but in the synagogue, I felt like an unwelcome stranger. I never expected to feel like that.
They have different customs here. Give it time. Things have a way of working out. Patience, my love. We'll learn together.
You are right, as always. What would I do without you? Hold me tighter, please. Yes, like that. Diogo, there is something you need to know.
What, my darling?
I believe I'm with child.
Are you sure?
As sure as I can be. I think I should know the signs after having 5 children. I just never thought it was even possible at my age.
It's a sign, a good thing. Imagine another little one.
to feed and care for, Diogo. How are we going to provide for another mouth?
Do not burden yourself with worries. God will provide. What do you think? Will it be a boy or a girl? A boy would be a blessing, and then we'd have 3 of each.
I don't want to conjecture. I'm a little superstitious. Let's just hope it's a healthy child.
Either way, this child would grow up knowing only the Jewish faith. That, my love, is a beautiful thing. When shall we tell the children?
Let's wait for a week or 2 just to be certain.
Very well. My only wish is to have you lie in and rest.
Rest? Who has time for rest? I will be fine. I am as strong as ever.
That I know.
My mother was true to her word, keeping her pregnancy a secret for several weeks. Meantime, each of us, in our own way, was attempting to adjust to this new life. I'm unsure who had it tougher, my sister Teresa or Isabel. One morning, we were washing clothes. There was Teresa, someone who had never done a day of real work in her life, pulling her big red hands out of a scalding tub.
Mama, I don't know if my hands can take much more of these. Can't we get someone like Benedita to do this for us?
How often do I have to tell you we aren't wealthy anymore? That life we left behind in Lisbon, it's up to us now.
Then explain to me again why we had to leave Lisbon. To live like peasants? In a place where no one knows us or cares about us.
That's enough, Teresa. You know very well why we had to leave.
I just thought it would be different.
We all did. I need to sit.
Mama, are you all right?
Yes, it's just give me a moment. I have not been feeling so well these last few mornings.
Have you told Papa?
Yes, of course.
Well, what does he say?
He says I may be pregnant.
Pregnant, Mama? But that's not possible, is it? You're much too old for that.
What? You think your Papa and I are too old to still enjoy each other's company?
No, but can't it be a problem at your age?
Hopefully not. We'll face that if it happens. In the meantime, I need you to be strong and do what you can to help the whole family get along and make ends meet.
Yes, Mama. I'm sorry I was complaining.
No time for sorrow.
Mama, do the boys and Isabel and Maria know?
Not yet. Let's keep it our secret for right now, please.
Yes, of course.
As miserable as Teresa was washing clothes, Isabel had discovered that cooking was not her, how do the French say it, forte?
Yes, Nona, I think that's the right word.
It didn't matter what she did. Everything that came out of the oven was burnt.
Merda!
I beg your pardon.
I'm never going to learn how to cook.
Then you and Rodrigo will starve for the rest of your life.
I'm not cut out for this. Servants are supposed to do the cooking, not us.
Isabel, there's an old Portuguese saying, a fome é o melhor tempero. Hunger is the best seasoning. Burn enough casseroles and you'll soon learn how to cook. So, let's get to work and prepare something so the rest of the family doesn't starve. And stop complaining. It doesn't befit you.
My brothers were experiencing their own challenges, finding work and confronting the prejudices against Jews and foreigners, something we never imagined possible in England. One afternoon, Andrea went into a small grocery shop down the road and took a few items from the shelves to the counter to pay.
How much do I owe you?
You're not from here, are you?
No, I'm from Portugal.
You a Jew?
Maybe yes. Why?
We don't serve filthy Jews here.
What do you mean?
I mean, get out of my shop, now!
In disbelief, my brother gathered his money off the counter.
Va se foder.
What did you say?
You can go to hell.
To make matters worse, he took his hand and swept all the items he was preparing to buy onto the floor and then turned and stormed out of the shop.
Oi, come back here, you bleeding mucker Jew!
When Andre returned home, he was so angry he could have killed someone with his bare hands. My father, who was quietly reading a book, attempted to calm him down.
Andre?
Do you know what just happened?
What?
We are not allowed in the shop down the street. Did you know that? The shopkeeper called me a filthy Jew.
He did what?
He called me a filthy Jew and told me we weren't welcome.
Andre, you can't let people like this get to you. He's nothing but a foolish shopkeeper who doesn't know any better.
He doesn't know anything but to hate me. And he doesn't even know me. What have Jews ever done to him to deserve that?
Andre, we are guests in this country. We must be patient. Changing people's attitudes sometimes takes generations. Let us not forget that being a Jew in Portugal was reason enough for being burned at the stake. At least here in England, we can openly be Jews without the constant fear of death.
But if people hate us just because we're Jews, that's not freedom, Papa.
True, but it's early days, Andre. Not everyone feels this way toward us. Patience.
Patience? You told us that leaving Portugal would be a good thing. It looks to me like we traded one devil for another.
My brother turned and slammed the door as he left.
Andre! Andre!
My mother came in from the kitchen, drying her hands to see what all of the shouting was about.
What is going on?
What's going on? I have an idealistic son who wants the world to be perfect. And he's waking up to the fact that it isn't. That's what's going on.
What happened?
The shopkeeper down the street refused to sell to him, calling him a filthy Jew.
What are you going to do about it?
Do about it? What do you mean?
If you don't stand up for your son, who will?
Gracia, whose side are you on? I'm just trying to make things right here. Can't you see how difficult that is with a son who has a hot head?
I'm not sure you want to know what I see, Diogo.
This is the conclusion of episode 4 of Flames of Freedom. Written by Richard Stone. Produced and directed by Mark Simon at Q-Tone Productions. Audio engineering, original music, and sound design by David Wilson. Executive producer Lance Toland. Special thanks to our ensemble cast. Zipporah, played by Angelina Santana. Benjamin, played by Jamie Tresalian. Diogo Nunez, played by Juan Pablo Gamboa. Gracia Nunez, played by Gabriela Lopetegui. Additional roles played by Brad Davidorf, Barry Stoltz, Francois Clemenceau, and Genevieve Wilson. Thanks to Rabbi Saul Rubin, whose assistance throughout the development of this series was invaluable, and for their guidance and support of this project from its early inception. Special thanks to Rabbi Robert Haas of Congregation Mikveh Israel in Savannah, Georgia. Rabbi Rachel Bregman of Temple Beth Tefillah in Brunswick, Georgia. Rabbi Shalom Morris of Beavis Marks Synagogue in London, England. And Lord Peter Levine of London City, England. And the Jewish Heritage Alliance for their support. This has been a production of Lance Toland Entertainment. Copyright 2024. All rights reserved. Flames of Freedom is a docudrama based on actual historical events. To learn more about this story, the actors, and the backstory of its production, join in on the conversation on Facebook at Flames of Freedom or at flamesoffreedom.net.